Okay, I'm going to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakat, Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach the Bible in 100% truth, and Shalom to the hopeful elect of the 12 tribes of Israel, starting with the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans in the land of North, Central, and South America, as well as the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners living amongst the other nations. Shalom to you. Okay, today back looking at Bible prophecy again, and I've come across this particular video here. And this is Dr. John Campbell, and he's uploaded a video here. In the top left, you can see this is WHO New Treaty, and this is a 20-minute video. As you can see, I'm going to leave the link in the description box. It's regarding changes that they're trying to make globally, internationally, around all governments. And so you have these bodies like the WHO, WEF, so on and so forth. And we know we're in that time of a changeover. They call it the Great Reset, time of digitization. And it's also known as the time of the mark of the beast. And we're in that period now. So, we're looking for a huge change over the world, not just with the monetary system, but the MOTB also involves a lot of other things. Your identification, your passport, licenses, and that digital identification will involve a certain level of biometric data. And the powers that be want to, ultimately give us this MOTB, and while controlling us through the monetary system, they also want to be able to read our responses and our physical biometrics and see what's happening within our body. The WEF have come out and made it clear before that they see the future. And if you've ever seen Yuval Noah Harari, he's somebody who represents the think tanks of the WEF, and he's come out and spoken before of how the future of politics is for a politician to be able to speak to the general public, and then the powers that be able to read the responses that are happening within the general public. So if a politician was to speak to you about certain ideas, you may nod your head and say, yeah, okay, that's fine, but inside you might be angry at some of the things that he's saying. So they want to be able to read your biometrics, to read your response. And that's one example. There's many other reasons why they'd want to read your biometrics. They'd want to be able to track you, know your physical whereabouts. And I've mentioned before, by reading your biometrics, and they can tell, what type of activity you're up to. So the MOTB is pretty much total control, and as mentioned before by Aaron Russo. And the biometrics, reading your biometrics and being involved and having the data on it and keeping an eye on it, the powers that be, that's one way in which they will have total control over you. They want to play the part of the Most High. They want to replace the Most High with themselves and be that ultimate power. And this is all an agenda of the banking elites and the satanic worshippers who pretty much run society that we live in. So, we know that a lot of changes have been taking place. I mean, during the time of 2020 and 2021, we saw certain particular thing happening all over the world, which I'm not going to mention by name. And, during that time, we saw laws become more draconian. And, up until now, people have been used to having the voting system and being able to pick and choose between different options, the general public. But during the time of 2020 and 2021, they brought out a particular thing which brought fear into the general public. The general public were then very keen to listen to to the instructions given to them by the powers that be. And what you started to see during that time, these political parties that represent different opinions, they were more or less swept aside, and an overriding power was speaking and giving out rules and laws. And this was something that was labelled as draconian, the way that they were doing it. And this time here ultimately was a test run for the MOTB. There were many things that were tested during that time. And, they got people prepared to stop using cash and go online, for example, and use digital payments. And they got people used to listening to that overriding Big Brother voice, and being customized to listen to instruction for their own benefit. And again, this is created through the fear that was installed in the general public. And so, when it comes to the time of the MOTB, the same thing's going to happen again. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to be worried for your health, and you're going to be worried about your monetary system. So to take this MOTB, you're going to be sitting at home, and you've got a big decision to make. And only those with the faith in Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai, the members of the elect, are truly going to know that they're going to not take it and steer clear of it 100%. For everybody else, there's going to be a big dilemma, and a lot of people will take it, even though at the minute they say they're not going to take it. So, the powers that be, the banking elites, they're trying to hit the general public on many levels with this MOTB, not just financially, but also in the health situation. They create a panic, and then they create a solution, order out of chaos. And they did that during the time of 2020 and 2021. And apparently, we've brought out before that there's another situation that they're looking to bring out in 2025. So again, we wait to see what happens with that. So in the meantime, using the situation that happened in 2020 and 2021, people like the WHO are now approaching governments on a worldwide scale, saying, we need to create certain legislation if this situation happens again. We saw what happened in 2020 and 2021. So many people died. We want to stop that. They're living off the back of the fear of that, and they're pushing to governments to make particular changes to hand power over to people like the WHO in those particular times when it happens again. So like I just mentioned a minute ago, you have these political parties and your freedom of choice, if you like, and this democratic system. But, since 2020, we're starting to hear that overriding louder voice coming from the top with these draconian laws. And like I said, this is all go, towards a change of implementing the MOTB. So when you watch this particular video here, you're going to see the fact that the WHO are approaching the UK government to make these particular changes. And this person on the screen here has pretty much, the situation in the UK is that if you have a petition, you're concerned about a particular situation, and you create a petition. If you were then to have a minimum of 100,000 signatures, which, in terms of the population, that's not really a lot. If you were to get 100,000 signatures, then you would be able to have your concern discussed in Parliament. And that's what this particular person has done here. He's highlighting the situation with the WHO and the fact that they want to take particular powers on board and override the government in certain particular situation. And he's trying to highlight that, he's managed to get 156,000, I think it was, signatures. So now he's obviously been able to get his concern heard in Parliament. So he's come out to speak about it and explain the situation. So it's very interesting to see how he breaks it down. And again, this is all changes. We're seeing changes happening weekly now with this MOTB situation. There's a lot of framework that needs to be set up for this situation. Like I've mentioned, it's not just a change. We can label it through the scriptures. We can label it as a change through the monetary system. And at the point at which you're told that you can't buy or sell without using this MOTB digital on the digital system, that's when the time of temptation begins. But around that, they want to incorporate other uses with this MOTB. That's why the powers that be are very keen to adapt whatever's happening within your body, and they want to adjust it. That's what they've been trying to do, and they're trying to ultimately put you up as you the person, the device. You will be living on the internet grid, on the Internet of Things, and so they want to track you the same way they could track a car or anything else. So it's all heading in that direction. So this particular video is quite interesting, and I'll leave the link in the description box. Please click onto it. I did come across this other article as well. I couldn't get the whole article because they wanted me to subscribe, which I didn't do. But the headline alone, this is Monday, the 24th of April. Rishi Sunak urged to let drug firms use NHS data for new medicines. So they're pushing ahead with this agenda. They want governments to relinquish confidentiality and rights and power to these worldwide governing bodies, whether it be from finance or for health. And this is the what they call the New World Order speaking and taking control. And even during the time of 2020, 2021, even during 2022 with the Ukraine-Russia situation, you're seeing a lot of people, the general public, complaining that the powers that be, the governments, aren't making change. That's because you're now hearing from the overall power above those two speaking louder and louder. So that's why I've mentioned it before. These governments have pretty much got their feet up on the table since 2020. They're there just for the show of it, and then that's what it is now. They're like entertainers. The same way you can go to a sports arena and watch a bunch of athletes competing, and you pay money for it, and they get paid well, and they're considered entertainers. It's the same thing with politics. It's just an entertainment game. Ultimately, Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua is going to bring the demise of this system, this beast system, when he wants to bring it down. And he will use the big players within the system to bring it down. But, it's all pretty much just an entertainment when you're watching politics. You watch the House of Commons in the UK, you watch these big political MPs battling it out in the House of Commons, having their big debates, and it's almost like they're taking the piss. In the way that they, laugh and joke, and ultimately, they're the ones that are deciding these laws. And like I say, since 2020, you can try to petition your local councillor, your local government, and it seems to be getting nowhere because this overriding power is speaking louder and louder. I won't leave the link for the article in the description box because, like I say, I couldn't read the whole article, but the headline says it all. But it's mainly about this particular video here. Speaking of all this, and thinking of the scriptures, it makes you think of Revelation chapter 13. This is the beast from the sea. It says, "And I stood up," and this is the prophet John speaking, and it says, "And I stood up upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." And so this represents the ancient Roman Empire, and it also represents the empire that we live in today, the revised Roman Empire. And in ancient times, it says the beast rises up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So the 7 heads represent the Greek, Roman, French, Spanish empires, as well as Germanium Major and Germanium Minor, and the British Empire. And these are all Edomite empires, and these are all part of the beast, having that 7 heads. These are the represents these 7 Edomite empires, and it says and 10 horns, and the 10 horns represent the EU nations, which are in the ancient time they represent the nations that were allied to Rome, to the Roman Empire, And today it represents the EU, who are allies with NATO. The seven heads in today's language is NATO, which is joined up with the EU. And the EU started off initially with 10 nations, and it says 10 horns. So in the current time, the EU did initially set up with 10 nations, but now it's grown. But the initial setup of that particular situation was with 10 EU nations. That's why it says here 10 horns. And upon his horns, 10 crowns, which represents rulership. That's what we're living under today. And upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. So jumping over to verse 2, it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and his great authority. And so again, this is further detail on this particular beast. This represents, it says, the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. So this represents the beginning of that beast, which is Alexander the Great from the Greek Empire, known as the leopard. And then it says, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, because the end of this empire is going to be with Russia. And that's why the feet are represented by Russia, because Russia will be responsible for bringing down this particular beast system. Even though Russia is not part of the actual beast itself, it does represent the end of the system through these nuclear ICBMs and Vladimir Putin. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion, which represents Great Britain, because this beast system is something that covers the whole earth. It represents EU and NATO and the democratic system that they employ around the world, and America is seen as the forefront of it, and America is used as the military might to go across overseas and somehow implement this system in individual governments, however they do it. That's why they have things like the Secret Service and things like that, because they have people who will go into these other nations, the FBI, CIA, so on and so forth. They will go into other nations, they will infiltrate governments, they will install puppet leaders, and ultimately they will extract what they want from the land, and they will install some sort of democratic system, which is part of their beast system, to then influence changes and rules however they like through these governments in these particular lands. So America is known as the military might of the beast. The Catholic Church is the religious aspect of this particular beast system, and Great Britain represents the mouth, and as it says here, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, because England, the UK, Great Britain is pretty much, through people like the Rothschild, they have the sway over the way things are done around the world, and they implement changes, they implement rules, and they speak great things from their particular position. And it's then America who use that military might to go in and implement these particular changes around the world. And that's what it represents here. So John's pretty much talking about this beast system. He's talking about the beginning, the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great. He's talking about feet of a bear, which is Russia, ICBMs, and Vladimir Putin. And he mentions here in his mouth as the mouth of a lion. This is Great Britain. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, as his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And so this was, after the ancient Roman Empire was around, that was pretty much, Rome was split into two parts. You had the eastern part and the western part of the Roman Empire. And the western part represented a lot of Edomites, and the eastern part, we had a lot of Jakes ruling and running around that particular area. So ultimately, these Edomites fell away, And, Jake did try to hold on to the traditions of this Roman Empire, but it seemed as if the Roman Empire was wounded to death, lifeless. And it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, as his and his and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beasts. So today, we're still currently living under this beast system. We've seen Alexander the Great come and go, and we've seen the leopard, and what John saw in the beast, which I saw was unlike unto the leopard. So that bit's come and gone, but yet we're waiting for that time of the feet of the bear, and we know it's around the corner. We know Vladimir Putin is probably the king, the representation. If it was Alexander the Great, and historically who started off this particular beast system, it will be Vladimir Putin who brings it down. We know he will be using ICBMs to do it, and we know it's around the corner. So we're in that time where we're about to see the end of this particular system. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And so, when you look at the ancient Roman Empire and you look at the revised Roman Empire today, represented by EU and the NATO, who is able to make war with him? That's the power that they have, the control that they have, the military might. The Roman army were fierce. You aren't able to come up against them in that particular time of ancient Rome. And it's the same thing today. When it comes to Revelation chapter 18 and the destruction of America, who are pretty much protected, by NATO, they're not going to. It's not going to work. It's going to take all the other nations around the earth that have ICBMs to fire them on America at the same time, and that shows how strong this particular system is. And that's why it's the end of it is represented by the bear, the feet of the bear, which is Russia, because they're going to have to supply a lot of those ICBMs. Verse 5 says, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And prophetically, that represents 350 years during the time of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, for example, takes you right up until the late 1960s, early 70s. And, as spoken of in Obadiah, the book of Obadiah, once these Edomites the clouds reach heavens, they supposedly went to the moon at the back end of the 60s. Obadiah speaks of, the Most High speaks of bringing down these Edomites once they reach the stars. So, since then you've seen a gradual decline in this Edomite empire, in the financial status of it, this financial structure, the social etiquette of this kingdom is going downhill. The level of thinking, the intelligence of the people, everything in this particular kingdom that we're living in at the minute has been deteriorating for the last 50 years, since the early 70s. And that's how long this word's been out here, this truth has been spoken. Because at the same time, you have to have balance. So once one kingdom is gradually falling apart, you have to have another kingdom simultaneously being built up by it on the other side. So that's the balance of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai. Moving on, it's 13 and 6 says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the Most High, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And he did that by making his image, the image of the Most High and his Son, look like himself, these Edomites. During the time, that time of 42 months, during that time of 350 years, since the time of Renaissance art and Renaissance language and so on and so forth, around the around 1500s ish, you had a time called Renaissance, which is another way of saying rebirth of this Roman Empire. And these Edomites pretty much came back and infiltrated the earth once more, and they gave power to the beast that was wounded. and they brought it back to life by implementing these traditions and these ideologies from the Roman Empire, and one of them being employing a tax system on people across the earth. You can worship whatever religion you like as long as you pay us a tax, and that's why that's the same system that we're living in today. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And so that's exactly what's happened today. These Edomites have the rule over these other nations, and that's why things like the one world language is English. That's the Edomite language, and people all around the world are breaking their necks to get to democratic societies and these Edomite societies, or if not, they want to turn their own society into this Edomite society. This is the power that they've had over the nations of the earth. But that has been dwindling, like I mentioned, over the last 50 years. And currently, as it stands today, you speak to a lot of these other nations, and their eyes are a lot more open to the false reality of the propaganda pushed by the beast system. So that's why they're starting to turn away from it, and you're seeing things like the de-dollarization, so on and so forth. And ultimately, this is all going to lead to the destruction, the downfall of America, Babylon the Great, and with it, the beast system. But when you go to the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 7, it also speaks about this particular kingdom that we're living in at the minute. It says, in the first year, this is verse 1, it says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. And this represents, four great kingdoms that have been on earth up until now. And it says here, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given into it. And so Daniel's had this vision, and these four beasts that came, and the first was like a lion, had eagle's wings, and this represented the ancient Babylonian Empire. And verse 5 says, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said it thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So this represents the Persian Empire, the Babylonian and then the Persian Empire. And then verse 6 says, after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of its four wings of a fowl. The beast had also four heads, and dominion was given to it. So this represents Alexander the Great, that leopard once more. The Edomite start of the Edomite situation, if you like, with the Greek Empire, and then they went on with the Roman Empire. And that's what it says, after behold, lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl, and the beast also had four heads, and dominion was given unto it. I could go into a bit more detail, but I'm trying to keep this short with the time, for the purpose of I don't have much memory on the phone. I'm having a few issues with downloading and uploading and making videos at the minute, so I'm trying to keep them short. And Daniel verse 7 says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. This represents the Roman Empire, and it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And so this represents the ancient Roman Empire, which has been rebirthed today to become the revised Roman Empire that we live in today. And that's why Daniel, when he saw this particular fourth beast representing his fourth empire, he spoke of it as having great iron teeth, and the Roman army were using iron in their weapons, and even today, we have these, much more advanced technology and fighter weapons, these fighter jets and so on and so forth, and they're still made out of what? Out of iron. And these weapons are able to devour and break in pieces, and that's what this current kingdom will do. This current Edomite system, the beast system that we live under. If you go against it, certain nations have, and they've brought war to particular nations and particular lands. And what has the EU and NATO they've done? They've stamped the residue with the feet of it. So I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. This represents America, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. So this three horns represents Great Britain, the Spanish, and the French, who were all, battling for control in the land of America. Once Columbus and the boys went over there and infiltrated the land, these particular these empires were fighting over control. And out of that, developed what? The little horn. And that represents America, the horn that rides that beast system. And it says, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And that's what they do out of America. These Edomites, they proclaim to have gone to the moon. They proclaim to be doing all these things out of space, under sea, with this technology. Yet somehow we're still living in a polluted, society with debaucherous activity and so on and so forth. All these criminal activities going on and so forth, and every day. So how advanced are these people? They keep telling us that they're advanced, but your lifestyle doesn't really agree with it. Yet they have us living a particular lifestyle, and the people with money are able to escape it and to go on to something else, and that's what the bottom line is. But they speak great things out of the land of America, and they make great claims, and they love to put sanctions on these particular nations through the beast system, through EU and NATO. And like I say, a lot of nations are getting fed up with this, and that's why de-dollarization is a huge thing at the minute, which again is propelling the MOTB. So you go to the book of Daniel, chapter 7, you can read about the four beasts representing these particular empires, the Babylonian, the Persian Empire, Medo-Persian, and you've got the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire that we're still living under today. And obviously speaking in Revelation chapter 13, we're speaking of that last beast, the Roman Empire. So back to Revelation 13 and 8, and it says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names were not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So pretty much those who are not the members of the elect, that are due to receive this word and receive salvation in the day of the Lord. Everybody else out here is due to worship the beast system. And it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. 13 and 10, and he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. So these Edomites have had us in captivity for a hell of a long time, and serve these other nations, and come the kingdom of heaven, they themselves shall go into captivity. It says, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And don't forget, Daniel described this beast system as dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue of the feet of it. And so this will all be, given back, payback, come the kingdom of heaven to this other particular nations. It says, 13:11 says, and behold, another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So this is still chapter 13, Revelation, and it's talking about this beast system. And at the point at which this beast system was looking like it had received this deadly wound and it was dead, it's come back to life through the rebirth, through the Renaissance period, and the Edomites have come out of power. And you can go to Revelation chapter 20 to read about that, how they, the devil has been loose for a little season upon this earth, which we're still living in today. And so, still speaking about this particular beast system, it says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So these two horns represent your two political parties. In most countries around the world, you have two main parties that call the shots when it comes to politics. And when you want to vote in this democratic system, you have a choice to vote for who you want, but ultimately you only have to choose between the two options they give you. And these two options are ultimately controlled by what? By the beast system, and he spake as a dragon. So these two lambs, this is the beast coming up out of the earth and had two horns like a lamb. So these two horns that look like lambs, they speak as lambs. They speak kindly to you. They come up with all these ways that they can improve your life. Vote for me and we can do this. Vote for me and we can do that. And it seems appealing, but ultimately speaking as a dragon. So that's why in the last couple of years, you're starting to see these political parties down tools, and you're starting to hear that voice above them telling you what you have to do, what's got to be done. This big brother voice, 2 meters apart, so on and so forth. So, and that's leading on into, the Russia-Ukraine situation, and, ultimately it will lead into the CDBC and the digitization of everything. So, if you understand these scriptures, one little particular video or article can lead you into many different chapters for understanding. Revelation 13:12, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, that ancient Roman Empire. You can, for example, one example is, you can worship whichever god you want to worship. You can worship a tree. You can worship a blade of grass. As long as you pay us tax, we'll let you do what you want to do. You can be a fully grown man, and you can pay people to treat you like a baby. There are people out there that do these stupid things. You can join these swinger parties, these sexually explicit, debaucherous lifestyles that people are living. You can do all these types of things out there. And you can even go out there and pollute the earth with whatever machinery you want to buy. And people are doing these things. And ultimately, as long as you pay your tax, as long as you pay your money, they're happy to let you do it, within their rules. And this is one way in which, you cause if the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast. And a lot of people believe in the system. They believe in it. That's the part when it worships it. You say to people, you've got this particular situation or you've got that problem. They believe that the answer is money. That's worshiping the beast system. The beast system tells them these are their ways in which they can move forward, and they believe in that. They believe in this democratic system. They believe that they have a choice and they can vote for this person and make a change. But ultimately, that big brother voice you're starting to hear that. So these two horns that are speaking like lambs are becoming quieter and quieter year by year. Until we get to that point, they implement that MOTB system and the slogan, you will own nothing and be happy. That will be in full effect. And it says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And this is, goes into this military might, this technology, this advanced technology that these Edomites have, these aircrafts and these military weapons. Don't forget, going back to Daniel chapter 7, he says he has teeth like iron teeth, and he break and devour in pieces, break in pieces and devour. See, this beast system eventually does what? It goes on to verse 16, and then he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a what? A charagma, an incision in the skin in which they can place a digital device in their right hand or in their foreheads or any part of the body, in order for what? It says here, and that so no man may buy or sell, say he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the name. So this beast system is ultimately going to offer you a a device, and they're going to say you need to take this and you need to put it under your skin, through that charagma, through that incision in the skin. And if you don't do it, you can't buy or sell. If you can't buy or sell, you can't eat, you can't buy food, you can't be a part of society. And that's that beast system, offering you one way to stay part of it. Ultimately, this beast system will be saying to you, you have to take this to stay a part of our beast system for us to keep providing you with things like money and being able to exchange it and food and so on and so forth. So we're living in that time now, with the MOTB. Just to finish it off, verse 18, this is, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So this MOTB is right around the corner. We're seeing the two horns that were initially speaking like lambs. They're getting quieter and quieter, and the beast who's giving them the instructions, is that voice is getting louder and louder, and that's why you're seeing these draconian measures coming into play. And this is happening now, on a weekly basis, on a financial system and on a healthcare system. So, understanding all that, if you click on to this particular video here, Dr. John Campbell, WHO New Treaty, and it will all make sense from there. So I hope that was edifying. Until next time, I'm going to say all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakat Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.